Hello everyone, my name is Andrew AJT and welcome to my new Super Mario 64 16-star speedrun personal best. This was a 23-minute and 18-second run, which is a 3-minute and 44-second improvement over my previous run on YouTube, which was 27:02. So if you don't remember a while back, or if you haven't been following the channel that long, I did a couple fun runs of Mario 64, I guess you could call them, of 16-star and 70-star, and those runs were done with very little preparation or practice, just for fun basically, just to see how I could do. And, you know, they weren't that great runs, but I did some commentary for them. It turned out to be a fun video. But I decided to do a little bit of practice and preparation and routing to see how much I could improve my 16-star time. Again, not with a ton of effort. This was not done over a long period of time. Just a little bit of practice and preparation and multiple attempts to get a substantial improvement to my time. For example, I practiced Lakitu skip, although I did mess it up in this run, as you see here. So I did pretty detailed commentary for those runs, and I'll have the playlist for them in the description if you want to watch them. So I'm not going to do in-depth commentary for this run again, but basically I used to do some glitch hunting for Mario 64 back in the late 2000s, and it was the first video game that I've ever played. First video game I ever owned, getting a Nintendo 64 as my first console, and I've always kept up with the speedrunning scene for this game. So basically, I just wanted a run that was decent with no major mistakes and like an actual decent route as well. So for example, I'm not going to do the slide stars in this run, as I probably did in my previous run. I took the time to actually learn the cannonless setup for Whomp's Fortress, and I also learned an easier setup to get one of the stars in Hazy Maze Cave. This category, 16-star, it's a very good speedrun category, but the only thing I really don't like about it is the end of the run has 2 BLJs that are fairly difficult. The 50-star door one is the hardest because it's just somewhat inconsistent. Even top runners will occasionally mess it up. And then the second one is a bit easier, it's the infinite staircase BLJ, but every once in a while it'll give me some trouble. So here's one thing that I actually took the time to learn, which is cannonless. Basically, the star is sticking out of the wall a little bit over there, and if you run at the wall with a very precise angle, you can grab the star through the wall, essentially. And for years this was a very inconsistent trick, but thankfully now there's a setup which is fairly easy to do, although I took a while to get it here. But it still is quicker than getting the star the old school way of having to actually use the cannon. I believe this setup was found by Sockfolder, so it's a very consistent way to get that star. It was pretty easy to learn as well. So as with my previous Mario 64 runs, this was done on the Wii Virtual Console with a GameCube controller on my CRT TV, which is very nice because the CRTs have very low input lag. At high level, most people will run this game on actual Nintendo 64, which I could have done. I still have my N64, but I prefer the Wii Virtual Console version for many reasons. The resolution is doubled, 480p compared to 240p on original hardware. And I also like using the GameCube controller for this game compared to the N64 controller, which I just don't really enjoy using. The N64 controller is notorious for having worn out analog sticks after a decent amount of use. And out of maybe my 5 N64 controllers, I think only one is still pretty good. The others' analog sticks are just too worn out to be usable for a speedrun. The biggest advantage to Virtual Console is the lag and loading times are significantly improved. There's almost no lag in the game, and the loading times are much faster. So it's actually a faster version than the N64 version. It's not too substantial, but especially at a high level it would make a decent amount of time save. But again, the top runners do play on N64. It's just kind of tradition. But I think it would be cool if someone decided to go for a world record on Wii VC. There is one skill element to N64 that is kind of lost in Wii VC, and that is that in the N64 version, because the game does have lag, there's a lot of specific camera angles that the runners use to try to reduce that lag. The biggest example is in Dire Dire Docks, the big submarine creates quite a bit of lag, so there's some very specific camera angles that are used to keep the submarine off screen to prevent the game from lagging as much. But in the Wii Virtual Console version, you really don't have to worry about that, because again, the lag is much better. So I guess it does take away some skill, I guess, to the run, but personally the lag reduction techniques are not that interesting to me. Especially because this game doesn't have the best camera as it is, so I feel like you shouldn't be obligated to have to not only control the camera to do the speedrun, but also control it to reduce lag. But that's just my opinion. So this is the first time I've watched this run, since I completed it around an hour ago, so I'm kind of reacting to it as well. You know, it's a pretty sloppy run at points, but nothing really went horribly wrong. If you want to learn some of the more basic techniques and some of the techniques that are used in a speedrun, I did a video called Super Mario 3D All-Stars Tips and Tricks a while back, and that basically has some of the, I guess you could say, advanced techniques for all three of those games, including this one. And most of the things in that video will work for any version of Mario 64 other than maybe the DS version. This run, though, could not be done on the Mario 3D All-Stars version because that version is the one with BLJ patched. Again, they did not patch it for the 3D All-Stars release, but they just simply used the final N64 release of the game, which did have BLJ patched back in the day. Although that version did add Rumble support as well. So normally I would get the 2 slide stars before going to Bowser in the Dark World, but we're gonna skip them in this run. One thing I was thinking recently is it would be so nice if they could release like definitive versions of some of the best N64 games, specifically this game and also Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. There's really not a best version of those games, even from a casual perspective, because there's remakes of all 3 of those games, but they're on handhelds, which comes with their own problems. So for example, Mario 64, you could play the 3D All-Stars version, and it's a very good version, and some of the improved graphics and textures in that version is nice, but you're missing out on the features that the DS version added, because the DS version added 30 more stars and Luigi and Yoshi and Wario as playable characters, but that's on a handheld with a D-pad control, so it's like not quite as good control-wise as the 3D All-Stars version, but it has more content. I just wish they would make like a ultimate version of the game, perhaps with taking the DS version and just making analog controls and maybe widescreen graphics and, you know, just other minor improvements, and you could have like an ultimate version of Mario 64. Because the DS version is very good, but the D-pad controls make a lot of people not like that game. Interestingly, Super Mario 64 DS does have somewhat of a built-in analog control because you can use the touchscreen for like full 360 motion, but the problem is it's just not very intuitive compared to using an analog stick, and plus you're still playing on a handheld, so you know, they should just make like a Super Mario 64 DS HD for Switch and just make those minor improvements with analog control, and it would be probably the best version of this game overall. And then as for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, those have 3DS remakes, but those games are still on a handheld and a low screen resolution compared to the Switch, and Ocarina of Time 3D is a very good remake, but Majora's Mask 3D is... it's okay. It made some good improvements from the original, and then it made other things worse as well. Like a lot of the transformations don't really control as well as they did in the original, so they should make Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask HD as well for the Switch. I would definitely play that. But I don't see any of this happening anytime soon because we already have 2 releases of Mario 64 on the Switch with the 3D All-Stars version and the NSO expansion pack version, and we also just got Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask N64 versions on the NSO expansion pack as well. So this was a new strat I learned as well, just an easier way to do this star. I still haven't played the expansion pack at all because, well, I don't have it because the controls on it do not look very good. You can't map C right to a standalone button. You can only use the analog stick or like a button combination. And the input lag, especially for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, is worse than the Wii Virtual Console versions, which makes no sense because the Nintendo Wii is a much less powerful console. So here was a mistake, but it actually didn't cost too much time because in Mario 64, when you miss a star, very often you can just go for another star, so obviously I intended to get that star up on the platform, but I accidentally fell off and I figured, well, let me just go get the other star. And it did waste some time, obviously, but it could have been much worse. But yeah, really the best version of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask is still the Wii Virtual Console version, the original Wii. The Wii U versions also had input lag, but the input lag is pretty reasonable on the original Wii Virtual Console. They could definitely improve the NSO expansion pack even more though, so I wouldn't be surprised if those versions continue to improve, and they've already improved Ocarina of Time apparently a decent amount compared to when the expansion pack was first released. One thing that's great about Mario 64 speedrunning is there's very little RNG, or like randomness. In some games you can lose quite a bit of time speedrunning from luck-based factors, but in this game there isn't too many things that are based on luck. Mainly just things with enemies, and also the way that coins fly out of boxes can be a little random. But even in a full 120 star run, you probably wouldn't lose or gain more than like 20 seconds or so, comparing the best RNG to the worst RNG. Maybe a little bit more than 20 seconds, but it wouldn't be that substantial. Whereas other games you could lose minutes to RNG, even in a run that's an hour and a half. And also one point about speedrunning in general is you can do speedrunning without having any plans to be like a top speedrunner. You can just do speedrunning for fun with any game really. If you just want to start a timer and do a fun speedrun of your favorite game without even worrying about like practicing strats or learning all the glitches, you can do it. And this game is a great example. The speedruns are somewhat easy to learn but difficult to master. Lots of people speedrun this game and they don't worry about competing for a really good time, or they don't worry about comparing their run to the best runs ever. But at the same time, it is also a very fun game to follow the competition of the top runners. There's a lot of competition for the world record in most of the categories for this game, and the competition can be quite fun as well. But as far as your own runs, you don't really have to worry about competition unless you want to. So here's the final star, Dire Dire Docks. The only reason you have to get this star is because the portal to Dire Dire Docks is in the way when you're trying to get to Bowser and the Fire Sea entrance. It is actually possible to skip this star and go directly to Bowser and the Fire Sea, but that's not allowed in the 16-star rule set, obviously, because you can't do those sideways BLJs on the stairs. And there you go, now you can go right to Bowser and the Fire Sea. I've actually been considering doing a 120-star speedrun of this game, and that would definitely be more of a fun run, like my previous 16 and 70-star runs. I would probably just do one run. But it would be nice just to have the 120-star time on my speedrun.com page, because then I would have runs for the three major categories for this game, other than 0 and 1 star. Zero star and 1 star do the sideways BLJs on the stairs, which are fairly difficult. If you're not very familiar with speedrunning in general, speedrun.com is a good place to start. This video is not sponsored by them or anything, but basically that website, you can search almost any video game, and it'll show you the best runs for that game and the different categories, and you could view the rules for each category if you wanted to do a run yourself. Sometimes there's rules just for speedrunning the game in general, like when the timer should be started. Some games have guides and tutorials on there as well for speedrunning. So here's a safe strat just for the Bowser throws. You can just kind of do 2 mini throws instead of a long throw. So I was actually starting to get a bit nervous here during this point of the run, because this was a pretty good pace. I've had runs where I got to upstairs around 19 minutes in, and this was even faster than that. And the reason I was nervous is because the next trick coming up here is the most difficult in the run, in my opinion. The 50-star door BLJ. Because it's just somewhat inconsistent, and I'm not that great at it either. Sometimes I just can't get it, and the run will end. I don't have to get it first try for this run to PB, but it would be nice to get it fairly quickly. So sometimes if you get a decent amount of speed but not enough to clip through the door right away, you can do a few extra long jumps here while holding the analog stick towards the door, and eventually you will clip through, but it just was not working there. I probably didn't have enough speed anyway. But thankfully, I was able to finally get the trick here. So that wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. And then we have to do another BLJ here, but this one's a bit easier because the stairs go on forever. So there we go, I got it fairly quickly. And that was actually a bit fortunate because I did not make it up the stairs all the way with the BLJ, but I made it far enough to where I got past the barrier, which makes the stairs infinite, if that makes sense. So even though I didn't go all the way up, I made it far enough to where I was able to climb the rest of the stairs without them looping forever. So at this point I know I can get a pretty big PB while I was playing this, so I figured I'm just going to play this pretty safe. You know, if you really wanted, you can skip this moving platform altogether and just kind of navigate your way through these wooden blocks here. But I wasn't going to take any chances, because in this stage, when you fall down once, you're probably going to get impatient and start falling down again. And if you fall down to the bottom of the stage or even into the void, it wastes a lot of time because there's no checkpoints or anything. Thankfully though, if you did die and had to retry it, you would spawn right outside the entrance. You wouldn't have to do the BLJ again. So this Bowser fight was not the best. Mostly just because of nerves, knowing I could get a huge PB here and that the BLJs went fairly well. See, that's a silly mistake. But to be fair to me, it is actually quite easy to mess up this Bowser fight. And in fact, in some world records, you'll occasionally see a missed Bowser throw. Probably not for 16 star, but maybe for 70 and 120. Although I think the current 120 world record does have all the Bowser throws. First try. If you do the Bowser throws the normal way, not the way I'm doing, it requires pretty good timing. It's not that difficult, but when you're right at the end of the run and you know you can get a big PB, it's pretty easy to mess up the timing. And I won't be able to do the safe strat I'm doing for the final Bowser throw because the stage gets a bit smaller. So for this one, I'm just going to have to do the throw the old-fashioned way from near the center of the stage. And I actually got it. The best method, in my opinion, is to actually line your analog stick up with the direction Bowser's going. So you just try to release him when the stick is upright, for example, when Bowser is upright on your screen, if that makes sense. But yeah, there we go, 23:18. Pretty big improvement from my previous run. Again, that's a 3 minutes and 44 seconds over my previous run on YouTube, so pretty happy with that. Definitely not a perfect run. Even with this route, I could probably get a 21-minute run, and somewhere along there, like 21 and however many seconds, but that might be difficult to do because of the BLJs, and I'm pretty happy with this run for now. I'm really glad I was able to improve the 27-minute time by quite a bit there. So yeah, that's really all there is to it. If you want to see some more Mario 64 videos, I'll put that playlist and tips and tricks video in the description and end screen and all that. And let me know in the comments if you want me to do a 120 star run as well. And if you have any thoughts about this run. But yeah, other than that, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on bell notifications to all if you haven't already. If you want to be notified whenever I upload a video. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram down below, and that's pretty much everything. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope everyone has a great day. I'll see you next video.